know more in a couple weeks. Once we get some greenhouse gas reduction calculations done and the transportation infrastructure figured out, we'll be able to evaluate where we are positioned relative to the last round of funding awards. So that's, even though they're going to be changing the rules for this next round, we'll at least know where we're positioned, against the last round. So.
And what project is this for, Bob?
What's that?
What project is it? Are you working on?
This is for Escalante Meadows.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. So now that we have it approved, and basically, I think we're very close to getting. We're nearly permit ready. I think there's only a few things left on the list. Now I just have to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you going to go ahead, if you have funding to get like the first phase done, will you start there, or are you going to wait until you have full funding?
In this case, what we're pursuing now, we were considering splitting it up into 2 phases, and that's certainly an option. But our preference would be to do it in 1 phase.
Oh, really?
It would it'd be simpler and cleaner in the long run, just to get it done in 1 phase.
And do you think you would have the ability to rehouse all of those people? Because I remember one of the reasons for going with 2 phases is you only had to rehouse half of them.
Well, so what I'm referencing is the finance phase. Our current thinking is we'll finance all of it at once, but we will split the construction into 2 phases. So we will.
Okay.
So what'll essentially happen is we will demolish all but 16 units, and so our most vulnerable families will stay on the campus, and they'll have a front row seat to active construction. And then once we build out the first phase, which will be 40 units, all of those folks will transfer over, and then they'll have a front row seat to the second phase of construction. So but they'll be in brand new units. So
they probably won't be complaining.
Well, it will not be a fun process that they're going through, but but when it's done, they'll forget the pain and it'll be well worthwhile.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, everyone, let's get going. As you can see from this slide, we are now recording. In fact, we got most of the financing for Escalante on camera and recorded, so we can save that for future projects. So let's go through the material. We're supposed to be doing this till 6 o'clock, but I suspect that we might be able to get through the material before then. So as you know, over a year ago, we started a resilience process, and in that process, we had stakeholder meetings, we had a number of leadership meetings, we did some presentations and collected data from kids in 7th and 8th grade, and we also had a stakeholder meeting that was done in Spanish. So that's where we were. Then the pandemic came along. We were just actually going to start organizing the focus groups when the pandemic hit. We were also going to start a unique youth stakeholder group. And when I say youth, I mean 7th graders through 25 years of age, split into 2 stakeholder groups, youngers and olders. And that was also stalled because we wanted to get a perspective of that group, of their view of Guadalupe, their view of assets and impediments of Guadalupe. We're going to go ahead and still do that, but we're going to do it remotely now. So we're in the middle of organizing how do we get these kids and these young adults into a Zoom meeting and engage them in the Zoom meeting. So we're still working with, and we'll have a meeting with a planning meeting on this next week. But watch for that in the future. The other thing is what we're doing today, we will do 9 more times with 9 other subjects from governance, safety, housing, children and youth, environmental, infrastructure, transportation. So we'll cover all of those subjects individually. So just working backwards a little bit, the purpose of this planning effort was twofold. One was to identify what the needs of the community was to improve its resilience. Every community has a degree of resilience. The question is, what is Guadalupe's degree, and what do we need to do to improve that degree of resilience? And that's really in the phase that we're in now, both in the stakeholder groups and these focus groups. We really are collecting data about what the community feels are the assets and impediments, what are the priorities of those. So we're really in that stage right now. Once we finish the focus groups and all of the stakeholder groups, we would then move to this last phase, which is putting all of this into what steps are necessary. Hope that makes sense. These are 4 definitions that are kind of general definitions of what resilience is. Capacity to recover quickly, toughness, the ability of a substance, which could also be a system or an object, to spring back, the ability to be strong and healthy and successful, even in bad times, and the ability to get back to the shape that we were in prior to a shock or a stress. This is the definition that we use mostly when we're talking about a community as a whole. So you look at systems, and you can look at a system being a business itself, how a farm operates. Obviously, a system is an ecosystem, it's in the name. But we also look at a system being the community itself. It operates as a system. There are multiple cogs in a community, and they all work in some way in unison or not in unison. And that ecosystem, that system, is what we're looking at. If you look at the 10 subject matters, those 10 subject matters together equal the community of Guadalupe as a system. And the question becomes, from a systems perspective, if there is a shock or a stress, does the community address those in a way that they can get back to normalcy, or even more than normalcy, get back to even stronger? And that question becomes part of what are the assets and the impediments. So up until now, is there any questions, first of all, just in relationship to assets and impediments and the whole concept of resilience? I know it's been a year, so it's kind of like, is that a long enough time away that we need some more understanding of this, or are we still getting that message of resilience?
Makes sense to me.
Okay, so in this particular focus group, we're going to focus on business, economic development of Guadalupe. We originally looked at this by collecting data from the community in these multiple groups. So what I have done is, and I'm going to start, before we go into the data, I'm going to start with a poll. So I'm going to show you a poll, and here is the question. What is the time frame of this resilience plan? So in other words, this question comes down to very much like a general plan or any other plan. Whenever a plan is put in place, there's usually a time frame. We want this plan to exist for this many years, this time frame. If you do a business development plan, what is the time frame of that plan? So the question for this resilience plan is partly related to what's the time frame for the purposes of saying, let's say 1 year from now, we say this plan is 1 year, and at the end of that year, that becomes the opportunity for the city or the community to come back and say, hey, that year's almost up. Let's look at this plan. How did it work? Did it work properly? Are there some adjustments? Do some of these impediments still occur and we need to do more work? Or are we in such a good shape that we can actually now do some other subject matters different from what we set up in this plan? So the question I have for the group is what is the time frame you think this plan should be before it is reviewed for still being relevant? Okay, I'm going to launch the poll. One of the options that you have is other. So if you don't think any of these dates, any of these timeframes work, then the question would be put other, and then in the chat field, give me the time frame that you think it should be. So I'll give you just a few minutes to do that. Roberto, hello. We're doing a poll.
Right.
You're just in time to vote. I have five respondents, 6 respondents. And we have 10 people. I can't vote myself, so I think I have to be off of there. So it's 9 people. We have 7 of 9 that have voted.
Tom, isn't it? It's really 2 questions. One is length of horizon, and then the other would be a check back.
The other one would be, sorry, I didn't hear the last part, Bill.
A check back.
Yes. So yes, theoretically, if you're looking at the horizon, just like with a general plan or anything else, you tend to take that horizon and then work backwards to, we should start working on this now because that horizon's coming. So I think this is more of the horizon date time frame.
Okay.
We can, I'd be interested in what, especially Larry, Bill, and everybody thinks about if everybody says the time frame should be, let's say, 5 years, at what point should the check-in be?
18 months.
You think 18 months? And we can put that, by the way, into the plan as part of the process. That could be part of that question. Anybody else have any other ideas other than 18 months? I think 18 months sounds pretty general.
Yeah, and I said 1 to 2 years, and so that sort of falls in the same time frame. And I see that Eric just responded 24 months. So that, yeah.
Well, I guess I'm kind of the extreme here. I put 20 years because I work on things like general plan amendments and all of those updates and stuff, and they're generally for a 20-year time frame. So that's why I went the long route on that. But I can understand if you'd want to do it shorter, that's fine too.
I put in 25 years, thinking of more of a vision rather, and then have a 1-year goal, 3-year goals, then where you want to be in 5 years.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of we're in the middle of a shock and it's a long shock. And so a resilience plan that is developed in the midst of a long shock is going to have to get rejiggered as that shock shifts. And so in an earthquake situation like Northridge, we got 2 years out and we were dealing with a very, very different community. And so if I think about resiliency, the biggest failure, this was Fillmore for me in Ventura County, and the biggest problem was we stayed in that disaster resilience frame for 5 years. And by staying too long in that frame, we literally created a political upheaval because city staff, elected officials, and the community were not at that point aligned. And to my mind, the purpose of a resilience plan is to check alignment. And so let's say this current shock begins to ease to some degree, then whatever that horizon is, Larry, I agree. I think a 20-year horizon as sort of the plan makes sense as long as there is also within the plan a formulated check-in, so that if something major has shifted or if there's an additional shock, you don't just keep merrily working toward 20 years out when your fundamentals have changed.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm thinking the same thing. In normal planning processes, 20 years is generally the number that you use, with an understanding that you're checking in as time goes along to see if it's still relevant or whether significant changes have to be made to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can see the horizon being 20 years. I can also see it being 15 or 10 years, depending on the level of items and how those items. So what I envision at the end of this is there'll be a number of goals and objectives, subject matter goals and objectives. Some of those subject matters are things that could be done almost immediately without a whole lot of complications. And some of them, as an example, broadband, are way more complicated, have much more sophisticated answers with more than just the city being involved. And so some of those are much more long-term. The question becomes is that 20 years as a horizon, knowing that the plan is set up to say 18 months, 2 years, before that plan is due, is timed out for the horizon, that there is a conscious effort by the community to come together and evaluate the plan from its originality. Did we do everything? Did we not do everything? Was there success? Was there failure? Should this be rewritten and changed to the new horizon? And I'm not sure if that's what everybody was saying, not so much the time frame, but everybody was saying basically the same. Regardless of the amount of time, there should be a time horizon, and then there should be some kind of a check-in, either just prior to or periodic check-in.
Well, I think you set your initial check-in, and then that may recalibrate the plan, because you may have new assets, you may have changed assets, right? The foundation or fundamentals may shift within resiliency versus a physical, like a general plan where you're really looking at infrastructure build, you're looking at transportation, you're looking at housing, you're looking at hazards. So one is about community resilience and the other is more about development processes. And they go hand in hand. They're not separate. I think one informs the other. So I think having that initial 18 months to 24 months for a check-in process lets people say, okay, this is what we said. Let's look at this. Is this the community that we're looking for resilience, or is it shifted?
Yeah. Eric, are you muted?
He put in some stuff in the chat.
Yeah, I'm in the grocery store right now.
Oh, gotcha.
So take my
I think
chat
you're-
and comments for what they're worth.
Well, I was going to say, I think your last comment in the chat should probably be verbalized.
Yeah. So in electrical engineering, there's a concept called the Nyquist sampling rate, which basically is you sample twice as high as the frequency you're trying to sample. So again, it comes back to this, like, I love just throwing out 20 years and I love throwing out the 24 months, but if you're going to update, if you're going to do this, updating, you got to match that to something in the environment. Like, don't just throw out the number because 2 years sounds like a great number. Do it because that is twice the amount of change that you're going to find in the federal election cycle or the state election cycle. Match it. It's an appeal to match it to something in the environment that is worthy of change.
Okay.
So that's the general concept.
Okay, I'm getting that. Everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. Go back to your shopping.
Got it. Anybody need milk?
I do, actually.
Okay, so based on that, let me ask the question. If you look at the survey that I'm now showing, do you want to keep what you marked as the horizon, the point where the plan is finished? Forget about the check-in, because that'll be my next question, but just from the standpoint of horizon, how long should this plan be for? Are you
wanting just verbalization?
I'm just wanting to, yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
just want verbal, because I just want to see if we're still okay. If you put something down here that you see is different now, let me know, so I know there's some differences.
No, I understand. I respect the comments that everyone are making. I still think the plan makes sense in having it run parallel to the length of a general plan and its elements. It's the same. I mean, there are going to be a number of policies in the general plan, in the economic element and land use element and stuff that are going to overlap with a lot of these 9 different categories that you have. And so that's why I'm just saying it makes a lot of sense to me that you run it the same length as the land use or as the general plan is going to be done.
Okay.
I agree.
Anybody else?
I agree with Larry, and it also means that if a specific section of a general plan all of a sudden is determined to be no longer appropriate, it will create some political will to perhaps fund an update out of sequence. Because you don't have to update the whole general plan with new information.
No, you do amendments every once in a while, and if things change from a physical standpoint that affect the policies, then you go back and you reevaluate the policies at that time too. So it's not like you have to do the whole thing at once, but any one of these areas that we're talking about for the resiliency program could trigger some minor changes to policies or goals or programs that would be part of the general plan.
The other thing, Tom, is it would also leverage the ability to get funding, right? If you're talking about community resiliency, there's probably more funding than to do a general plan update or a spot check. But if you're talking about raising all boats, then there may be funding available to do that kind of specialized project.
So is anybody else that has anything they want to add to that? Because the next question I have is, let's assume there's a poll up there and you can give me your guys' responses. It's not up there, but if you is part of what we call an implementation plan, which is in the resilience plan, you can, and I heard check-ins, but there are 2 possible ways to do check-ins. Maybe you do both. One is to say in the implementation plan, that a review of the plan and its goals and objectives will be reviewed at every 5 years, let's say, to see that the plan is that the goals and objectives are being met, that the goals and objectives are moving forward, that there is no adjustments necessary, that sort of thing. A kind of evaluation of how it's going every certain number of years. And then I don't think you need that 18 months before the horizon review, because you've been doing it every X number of years as part of implementation. So my question would be is does it make sense as part of implementation to go with a periodic review, or does it make sense to just keep it going and then do the review prior to the end of the period, the horizon date? Thoughts, anybody?
Say that again, Tom.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so usually in a resilience plan, I would want to have as part of the implementation. So the city agrees that this is the plan, they accept the plan, and they accept in that plan that this is not just a document that's going to sit on the desk, but they're actually going to approve an implementation plan. Here is what is going to be done to address each of these items that need to be addressed over this period of time. As an example, which is not a good example because it won't happen, but as an example, the implementation plan says that the city will hire somebody to implement this plan. So as also part of the implementation plan is the city has approved this plan. Maybe the city, as part of that implementation, says we want whoever's going to be doing the implementation, whoever that is, whatever that happens to be, is part of the plan. They will come in front of the council every year to check in on the status of this implementation.
So a built-in check-in, basically.
Yes. It's a way of saying that we're not just going to do the plan, we're going to also have structure in place for a review process. And that could be every 5 years, every year, whatever it should be. That's just one way of doing it. In a general plan, Larry, correct me, but I think in a general plan, it's kind of something that's not necessarily
Hey, how you doing?
institutionalized.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. If you can do paper for me.
And don't forget the milk.
Yeah, don't forget the milk, Eric. So my question to the group is does it make sense that if the city's going to approve this, that there is a mechanism for a review process, a check-in?
Yeah.
That's question one. And then question two is, what do you think that time frame should be?
Well, I don't know that you need a specific time. I mean, it's going to take quite a while to put this thing all together. And then you need to let it run and see how it works. And so I would not want to come back and revisit it like in a year or something. I think I'd want to give it a little more time, but also have a reopener in there if something goes south, or if something happens again, like another pandemic or whatever, that we would have the ability to go back to council and say, I think we need to make some changes to this. So open-ended, just to make sure we've got a reopener built into it. And then I would say 5 years, unless something happens where you need the reopener.
Okay.
Well, and
Anybody else?
I second that motion. I like that concept because Yeah, if circumstances are changing, then it's time to take a look. And so rather than have a fixed time frame, yeah, and then I like the 5-year time horizon or whatever it is for the implementation plan. So yeah.
And then if there are
What assumptions? Oh, go ahead.
well, no, if there are specific milestones within the implementation plan that are going to require policy from council or something else, those are always going to be points where it may not be a reopen, but it is that the plan is moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I'm assuming that if you have a staff person who's leading it, that there are benchmarks along the way to get to those check-ins with the larger group. So there's some accountability and course correction and things that are happening regularly.
Okay. Anybody else have any anything to add, or agreements, disagreements? Right now, the what I'm getting is one, that it's open-ended. Two, that there's an opportunity somewhere in there, a mechanism to reopen depending on circumstances, and that potentially every 3 years there should be a opportunity for the council to hear, where are we with this plan?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
Sounds good to me. Okay, I'm going to, let me just double check here. Okay, let me stop sharing. The poll's saved, so. I'm going to, just to give us an opportunity, I'm going to actually relaunch the poll and see whether there's any changes. I'll keep both versions. So the question becomes, what should the time horizon be? Not the check-in, but the actual time horizon. And if you could just quickly re-vote, I'd appreciate it. Okay, we have ended the poll. 8 people have, and there's your results. So a little bit different this time, but we're still mainly, it looks like, split between either a 10 or a 20 year. So we'll go ahead and keep this data. We'll use it and ask the same question in all of the other focus groups to see what the biggest consensus is, if there is one.
Can I just make one more point, Tom?
Sure.
I wonder if, my first question was, and then I think you clarified it, whether you were asking us just about the business part of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it sounds like, no, it's for the entire thing. But I'm thinking across all of the different content areas, there might be some things, just like we were mentioning earlier, that might be completed in a couple of years.
Yes.
Or might take longer than 5. And so you would, you know, there might be some benchmarks that are met before the actual check-in.
Yes, exactly. Certainly before the first one, and the intent would be to, stand in front of the council as an example and say,
Yes.
of all of these goals and objectives, these have been met and these are still outstanding.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move this out.
Oh my goodness. That's what you do? You go fall and flip. Oh.
All right, something happened. It stopped sharing. Something happened to my PowerPoint. Okay, let me, this doesn't let me bring it up. So let me pull up the data so that you have it and we can go over this. So back in, and this is hard to see, but don't worry about this part because you don't need to necessarily see this. If you look at the bottom, and by the way, all of this original data will get online in the next couple of weeks, so you'll be able to look at this online directly. But down here are the tabs of the different groups and their assets and impediments and the data we collected from them. This is the leadership group. This is what we collected from the stakeholders originally. This is the stakeholders and the leadership combined, a whole list of items, data. This is data we collected from the students. They had a lot to say. This is, those were all of the individual students, and this is where they've been merged. And what we basically did is try and merge them for similarities. So this is all of the students merged. This is the data we collected where the meeting was in Spanish. So that's all the data that we collected. And this is taking that data and pulling out what is related to business. So I'm going to show you this first list because this list breaks what each of the groups said are assets impediments that are based on these groups. So these are the things, and I'm wondering if everybody can see this okay?
Yeah.
It's small, but I kind of try to get it as big as possible.
The assets are blocked a little bit by our pictures, our faces. But,
see, you should be able to move that, Larry. You should be able
okay.
to put your cursor on it and move it out of the way.
No, sorry.
That's a bummer.
Let me see if I can minimize our faces.
Hmm.
Oh, there. Okay, I did.
Okay. So, for example, the leadership talked about as an asset, the dunes were an asset. These are subject matters, assets and impediments from all the different groups that have a business flavor to them. So it does have my bias because I'm the one that went through the list and pulled out what I thought was business related economic development. So, for example, the dunes, which was seen as both what was seen as an asset to the community, and mainly in the area why it's in here is because it is it's part of Guadalupe as quote unquote a destination location. So if the community really wanted to be a destination, the dunes need to be more emphasized within the community in some way. So that was an asset Another asset that was brought up was restaurants in general. So Guadalupe is known for its restaurants, quote unquote. That's they felt was an asset. You'll probably want to say that some of these assets also feel like impediments right now, but know that they can swap over. The recent growth is an asset. So the Pasadena being an asset. Guadalupe downtown. Stakeholders said things like the business potential is there. Also, Flaco complex is going to be, will be, could be an asset to the community. They have listed here new restaurants. Sadly, one of those on that list has now closed down because of the pandemic.
Which one's that?
Anthony's.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Again, dunes and beaches, railroad, the railroad stop as an asset from a business perspective. Again, the railroad destination. The natural beauty of the surrounding area of Guadalupe. A lot of discussion with this. So the 7th and 8th graders are interesting because they're all about the particular restaurants. They love King Falafel. So they've
King
got the
Falafel
names
and
of
La Fuente, which is
La
another,
Fuente.
but
Really? I wonder if I may have missed it then. So these are their areas. And then this is for the Spanish group. Now, you'll notice there's more impediments here than there are assets. When in truth, if you go back to the groups, they were equal. And the reason for that is because when you take out only the economic development and for impediments, there was a lot more listed impediments under business than there were assets. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to make this easy, these are the assets taken out of the individual groups that did it and just thrown into a group. So my question to the group, and this is where we're going to do some work with you, and this is where people need to just give me comments. If we're in a room, this would work really well. So let's see how it works remotely. The first question to the group is, are there some of these assets that belong together?
Well, you've got dunes and beaches down halfway down, and you've also got the dunes as the first asset. So maybe combining those two or removing the dunes beaches from the bottom because you kind of covered it. See where that's at? Come up a couple lines.
Yeah,
There.
right in there.
Yeah. So that's
So
kind of
we could, yeah. So the dunes and them can go together. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can do this in real time and just throw them in here. Oh no, I can't do it that way. Let me just put it in here. It's kind of harder to write in there. Did you get that, Sonia?
yeah.
Okay. So Sonia's going to try and do some correcting on this. It's hard to do it when you're in the thing and presenting.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, you've also got this. The second one right under there is food and restaurants, and then you've got them all listed down below. So
yeah. So join
those.
all of the restaurants.
Yeah.
And just say the restaurants in town.
Yeah.
Okay. We can do that.
And I'm also thinking Guadalupe Street downtown and business potential could be combined because that's where the work is actually going to take place.
Yeah.
We really don't have a city that's other than just the linear commercial district, like some other larger towns where you might have multiple areas where you could have business potential. Ours all really has to go in the downtown area, or at least along Highway 1.
Yeah. Okay, we can put those together. Anything else that we can see? What about, we've got a nice view from the bridge, and what they're basically talking about is the footbridge. You
Oh,
walk on top of the footbridge.
I was thinking the bridge going over Highway 1.
Yeah, no, that's not a good
Over
view
the
from it.
river.
I know. But they're actually talking about, and I don't know if you've ever done it, but if you go to the top of that bridge, there is a really nice view from up there.
Yeah.
So I think that, along with, I think there was other statements in here about 360. Yeah, there's one, beauty 360.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we can join those two and just talk about the view.
That makes sense.
Yeah, something to the extent of the view around Guadalupe, natural beauty. Okay, anything else that you could see that could be joined?
You know, Tom, the one thing that comes to mind, of course, this is sort of, I guess, longer term, but I think of the, in my mind, I tie together food and restaurants, the Royal Theater, and the railroad stop all in one. Because if the city were to become a destination, a travel destination for weekends or whatever, you know, you could take the train from LA or San Diego just to get away, and then have a nice little, you know, sort of weekend. You could walk from the train station if there was a hotel nearby, and then if there were restaurants.
So the destination location is the one.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a thought. I know we're not there yet.
No. That's ideal, because I think one of the messages in the assets is in there is talking about there are assets that we have that are the core to a destination location. You know, we have the natural beauty, we have the ocean, we have the dunes, we have restaurants in the downtown area, we have a train stop. So there's some things that you could put together and say, these are the assets for a destination location.
And hey, it's Eric here.
Yes, Eric.
It's a matter of, to me, that sounds like the description of, you know, like it's compact, it's walkable, everything is accessible, and it's you know, you've got a density of assets that is exploitable in terms of your destination.
Okay. If is there, thanks, Eric, is there anything else that you would kind of join together? I think, you know, the paintings on the wall, I wonder if that also belongs in the downtown.
Are you talking about the murals?
Yeah, I think that's what they
Yeah.
meant by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd almost want to consider putting that into the downtown Guadalupe Street piece.
Yeah, definitely.
Then you've got a train station and railroad stop, future development.
Say that again, Bill. You're saying the train station
and railroad stop. You've already got the facility.
Oh yeah, I see railroad stop. Yeah, they belong together. And you said 3 though. What was the other one?
Just, well, to dovetail off Eric's point, I think that one of the assets is you've got elements of destination. So packaging.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably a note as opposed to a specific asset.
Yeah. Okay, I think definitely the railroad and the train station are the same thing, so they should at least be joined in that way. Okay, any other pieces to this particular one? The assets that you want to join? Okay, so this is going to be a little harder because these are the impediments. And there's a lot of them. So do you see anything on the list that you would, let's see if we can join these in some way. I think the empty building and the theater are actually the same thing.
Well,
Because while the theater is an asset, it's actually not, it's an impediment at the same time right now.
it seems like there are two kinds of impediments here. One impediment is a description of physical space, and the other is an impediment desire for something else. Like, I'm sorry, a personal bias. A big buy in Guadalupe do not go together. So
No,
Yeah.
of course not. Yeah, of course not.
Best
I didn't editorialize this group, but I agree.
so maybe to group the impediments by, you know, this idea of business leakage, lack of vibrant. Okay, that's sort of that's a descriptive. That's an outcome, not an impediment.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this no labor ready agencies. Well, there's probably not a business case, so there's a reason for that stuff. So
Sure.
I think maybe descriptors as outcomes is one needs to be grouped as kind of a notes, or descriptors. No mall. Yeah, mall's going to really do good things for the downtown of Guadalupe. I mean, just some basic kinds of things. Lack of storefronts, I'm not sure what that means. If your empty buildings are populated, there certainly is physical location for storefronts.
You know, there are planning applications out there, and there are games like Sim City and some of these other things where you build something from nothing. And if we had the blank canvas, and that's the storefronts in Guadalupe, what would it take? What combination of businesses and stuff would make this a place that people would want to come to? You go to other small towns and you go, well, how are they doing that? It's just we've traveled, you know, through a number of states on our trip right now, and there are some little communities that just have like maybe 1 or 2 blocks, but they've got everything. They've got the art studios, they've got the little coffee shops, you know, the little niche things, and I'm just thinking, if we had that opportunity to say what we think would work in Guadalupe, then maybe we go out as if we were an economic development committee and try to bring businesses in and try to have them see the vision of what can happen. Because like when you get a new restaurant, well, then they stay open a little later than 5 o'clock. And so then you start having other people that want to maybe keep their businesses open longer. And so I looked through this whole list here and stuff, and I just know that we're not going to get a Walmart. We're not going to get a Starbucks. You know, there's just certain things that aren't going to happen, but we could still make the small town happen for us.
And to tell you the truth, a lot of those, like No Mall, Walmart, like all the big chain stores, those mostly came from the teenagers in the 7th and 8th grade class. So just to put that into perspective, because
I think that, you know, I think, Sonia, to that point, I think contextualizing the impediments is really, really important, because what happens is people then focus on that. Well, it won't happen. So the impediments become a statement of judgment versus, Larry, I absolutely agree with you. Guadalupe is a pretty amazing place. It has great bones.
Yes.
Right. Those are the impediments that you focus on. You don't focus on wishing we were somebody else.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
But
No,
if
and
I'm
that- and-
in 7th and 8th grade, I'm truly wish I was somebody else. So
yeah.
I remember
So,
7th and 8th
yeah.
grade.
And we have to remember that when you're in the condition that Guadalupe is in right now, which you have the bones, but you don't necessarily have the blood,
Yeah.
or you don't have the skin or the muscles. Part of the reason to get out of that is things have to happen.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's one little thing that triggers the movement, and sometimes it's multiple little things. So at this point, it is a huge question of how do we get Guadalupe from where it is now to somewhere else, knowing that the primary place that we should be doing it is in the downtown Guadalupe Street corridor. That's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck as it relates to destination location, right? So I've deleted some things off of here based on what I'm hearing, which is instead of just reducing this first, we need to probably cull some, right? So what else would you cull as a beginning? No grocery store, superstore. I think my opinion is the grocery store is an issue.
Well, so an impediment is that you have a business food desert. It's not.
Yes. Mhm.
So I think it's more characterizing the actual problem.
Yeah, but I'm thinking in this case, it doesn't necessarily even have to be in business. It actually can fit in one of the others as a food desert issue.
Right.
So
Well,
is there anything else that you would take off this list just to cull it?
no labor-ready agencies. Upper right column to U.
Oh, excuse me. I was doing my other right.
Yeah, I know that right too.
We need a Best Buy. I'm getting rid of that. Okay.
Yeah.
You've got several of these unused, vacant, closed stores.
That could all join into the redevelopment of downtown
Yeah.
Yeah.
as an overall, the need for redevelopment.
And
Mhm.
Guadalupe Street downtown is the focus. So it's not that it needs help, it needs focus.
Mhm. So uh, the idea would be as an impediment that the plan would want to focus on the Guadalupe Street downtown corridor as their impediment to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So some
There's
of these. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say some of these things could be pulled out of here from that perspective.
Yeah. One other thing I think we need to factor into this, and it's something that I had to deal with when I was community development director for Santa Maria, is when you consider doing shopping centers in areas other than the downtown, what are those implications going to be?
Yeah.
And so, we went ahead and did Enos Ranch, and pretty much had decimated the downtown already by tearing it down and then building the two malls. But the city council wanted the tax revenue from that and from the new car centers and all that stuff, so they went ahead with it. But something more local for us to think about is there's like 30,000 square feet of retail commercial that is approved already for Pasadena.
Mhm.
And so when we look at what we're doing for the downtown, we should see what we can do to not necessarily hurt the downtown, but complement it. And there's no room for let's say a grocery store in downtown, but we could have that element over in Pasadena. So looking at the two sites, I think we need to keep that in mind, that vacant land. Now they have told me that there's no plan to do any construction on the commercial until they've got 400 rooftops. And they're probably at about 250 right now, something like that. So I can get the actual number, but they've got 800 altogether. So they wanted to get at least half of the houses built before they considered doing that commercial area. So, but I think we should consider that and keep that as part of the overall plan, because it is part of the city, even though it's not in the downtown core. It has the potential to supplement what we can't do in the downtown. Where we might like to say, yeah, we'd like to have a larger market, but the downtown markets that we have right now, I think they're going to stay in business. They've got specialty foods and different things, and it's like when a Walmart comes to town. People think everything's going to close, but it doesn't, because people have specialties and you still go to those stores. So that just a thought, when we're looking at the overall plan, that we need to consider Pasadena in there.
I completely agree. I mean, one of the things that you have to be careful of is for some lucky reason, Guadalupe has missed the issues of Prop 13.
Yeah.
And Santa Maria is a perfect example of a community that these are the results of Prop 13.
Yep.
I've noticed in here that there's quite a few statements about jobs. So from a business/economic development perspective, would you want to wrap all of those round on the subjects of jobs? More jobs, better paying jobs, more diverse jobs.
Yeah. That makes sense. I know some of the planning seminars you go to, they talk about jobs, and
Yeah.
it's what makes the world tick. And so we do need to consider that here.
Certainly, from a resilience perspective, one of the things you look at from a resilience perspective is to ensure that you don't have, or the insurance that you have diversity and redundancy. So you don't want a community to be 70% employed by a certain industry that could go away.
Yeah.
So from a diversity perspective, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, we do definitely have an ag focus, but we have a lot of land that's zoned for general industry, and it is possible if someone wanted to, build a factory or some type of an assembly facility. They got a lot of those just mom and pop type businesses in Santa Maria out on A Street. And those types of things could be really good for the city. We've got the land for it, and obviously it would bring in higher paying jobs than the field workers are getting right now.
And that's to me, outside of looking at Guadalupe from its benefit of the downtown and destination location, in everything that I've looked at, it feels like that's one subject, and then the other subject is jobs.
Yeah.
So we could join all of these individual stuff that talk about high-paying jobs, those sorts of things, and just put them into seasonal worker, not enough jobs. There's quite a few of these that are focused on jobs that I think we could put into one group.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think I've got rid of most of the ones that we wouldn't consider. Redundancy and no chance.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think I got rid
The
of all
mall
the no
and Best
chances.
Buy just are not going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, those gone. The Walmart's gone as well.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything left. Does anybody see anything left that should be?
Well, where it says no grocery store / superstore, I would take superstore out because,
Yeah, so just call it grocery store.
yeah.
And maybe say no large grocery store, so you're not stepping on the toes of the 3 or 4 that we already
Yes,
have.
agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. Sonia, how do you feel about, where are you with this?
So I merged a couple of them, but I'm not sure if you want me to keep all the ones that are there. I know that we've said that the business food desert, which is the same as like no large grocery stores. Unused vacant storefronts / need to revitalize downtown is another one I have. Jobs, not enough, not diverse, no high paying, seasonal. The Pasadena retail area is not developed. I don't know why I put that one. And then no large grocery stores, which goes into the one I already have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
what
the working jobs, you could put all of those into one as well.
Yeah, I put all of those into one.
Jobs, okay. I'm only deleting ones that we're basically saying they don't make sense, that we've said should not be in there. These are all getting merged into something. So do you think you can put these all in to do the survey? Now that we've dropped it down?
Okay, so I'm gonna include all of these in it.
Whatever's left after you do that other merging that you've been doing, yes.
Okay, so let me just tell you the mergings that I have.
Yeah.
Just so that you have, so I don't miss anything. So for the assets, I don't know if you want to switch back over to them so they can see them, just to make sure I got everything. So I have the assets as destination location, which includes the beach, downtown, dunes, restaurants, the train, and the Royal Theater.
Yeah.
Then there's restaurants and food as one. And then there's the Guadalupe Dunes and Beach and also Flaco. The 360 natural beauty of Guadalupe. And then I have just some that didn't really go, I didn't know where to put them. Agriculture and farms, cannabis, murals.
Yeah, I'd leave those in as the murals can go into the downtown.
Into the downtown.
Part of it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you
that's
guys
what
explain to
Larry
me
was saying.
what cannabis is doing on this list and how it's what they're
I'm
talking
glad you
about?
asked. That's the only question I had this whole time. Thank you for that, Larry.
I don't know how it got on there, but somebody suggested that that would be an asset.
Well, we've already been through that, and the zoning ordinance doesn't allow for sale or distribution or anything. So I think it should come off to be consistent with the current zoning ordinance.
That's
Okay,
good.
I removed that. Another asset is Pasadena recent growth,
Yes.
parades, and small businesses.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the ones that I have for assets. So I'll put those on one.
Good.
And then the
Some of
impediments.
those, I think some of those, once we get a little bit more nuanced, I think some of those, like the parades, are really part of downtown and destination. People come to this town for those parades. So, but I think we can do this as a beginning part, and then on the impediments.
So the impediments, I just have 4. The business food desert, unused vacant storefronts / downtown needs to be revitalized. And then jobs, there's not enough, they're not diverse, there's no high paying, and it's seasonal mostly. Actually, that's just those 3. So I don't know if there's another one that we want to include.
The only thing I would do is I would take then some of these that don't necessarily fit directly into those subject matters and just add them like you did with the other one, right? just leftovers.
Everybody has a little
Okay.
bit in terms of
Any other comments from everybody on this assets and impediments? Anything remaining that you want to say, think about?
I just noticed it was kind of curious that nobody listed the fact that you have Highway 1 running right through everything we're talking about as an asset. I mean, I live here now. I bought a home in Pasadena a year and a half ago. And, you know, it's basically the second time I ever came to Guadalupe, I was moving into my house. But since I've been here, I've just noticed so much, I don't know, tourists, but just travelers through north and south. You know, people with motorhomes, people at the gas station. There's a lot of people passing through here all the time, and they have to use Highway 1 unless they know about Expo Street, which took me a couple months to figure out.
Yeah. Is
Oh,
this
it's
John?
pretty big asset. Yes, sir.
Sorry, your sound is really poor, but I think I'm getting it. Thank you. So I think maybe we could, if it's all right with you, John, I think we could add that it's Highway 1 as part of the downtown piece of this as an asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's actually
Just name it.
destination. For
Yeah, I
people
think
out
it
of-
should be.
For people out
Yeah,
of state anyway, come to California, I mean, Highway 1, there's T-shirts. It's a logo. People, it's, you know, they know it. They want to drive on it.
yeah, and we you know, the Guadalupe Business Association has that Highway 1 sign on there as well.
Mhm.
I agree. I think that's definitely something that is on the asset side of it, and we don't always know that when we're on Guadalupe Street, we're actually on Highway 1. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you mentioned Highway 1, that makes me think of Caltrans. And I don't know if you have approached
Should put
them
that
at
on the
all.
impediment side?
Yeah. I mean, I think the same rule applies here as it does in Santa Maria, and that their right of way goes right up to the face of the building. So
It sure does.
sidewalks and stuff are really under the control of them, and that really can cut into any future plans for doing outdoor cafes and that sort of thing.
It has been an issue. I would want to say Highway 1 fits again, like some, in both locations. It's part of the destination on the asset side.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the impediment for businesses. I know of a couple of businesses that are no longer there that told me initially when I was walking around the town about the fact that they couldn't put a sandwich sign outside their door because Caltrans doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
I also know that Caltrans increased the speed of cars, the maximum speed. They increased it when the city actually wanted it decreased.
Yeah. Well, see, that's kind of a technical thing. It's based
Sure.
on the 80th percentile. They take those, and people are blasting through town, then it's like they have to do it. Otherwise, they won't be able to write the tickets for the lower speeds.
Well, I know that the city, I think, wanted it to, either the city wanted it 25 or 30, and Caltrans said no, 30 or 35. I don't remember what the actual number was.
Yeah.
But they definitely wanted to go higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure those are just examples of where I think Caltrans, you could put on the asset side, Highway 1, and on the impediment side, Caltrans.
Yeah.
That makes
Yep.
sense.
Tom, where does the library fit into all of this, not being in a central location? Is that an impediment or not?
It is, but it's not quite in the business section. It's probably going to fall into one of the other 9 categories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But absolutely, the library is definitely one of those subject matters that I think is going on there. I would say that one of the original discussions, and I'm kind of curious about what everybody thinks about this while Sonia works on something for me. One of the impediments that was discussed in many of these places and with businesses was the fact that there was no association. There was no business group that the city could go to or that they could go to the city as a group. We now have Guadalupe Business Association. So do we take that off the list because it's quote unquote done? Or do we leave it on there because we want to continue to have this conversation about the need for a relationship between the businesses and the city?
Why don't you frame it that way, Tom? The critical. So it is about the relationship between the businesses and the city, and that there is this emerged group, which is the Guadalupe Business Association. But that's not the only, right? There's the formal, and then there's going to be the informal too.
Yeah.
And hey, Eric here, can I chime in?
Sure.
Yeah, so I like the way that Bill just put it. We certainly want to keep it on we want to keep that from both a near term and a resilient perspective, that communication with the business community is part of the resilient, is a long-term part of the resilience plan. It doesn't matter, like, it's great now that we as GBA have a voice and can speak with consolidated voice on certain things, but that lesson, that's going to be an enduring lesson, and it's whether it's GBA or whether it's some other group that's out there that eventually speaks for the business community, or it is the business community as individuals remaining engaged. No matter what that is, resilience in Guadalupe is going to depend on a communication with the businesses.
Yes. And I want to be clear, this is part of why I asked this question earlier about timeframes and so on. Some of these goals and objectives that have come in here are not necessarily the job of the city. Some of these goals and objectives might be community-based goals and objectives as well. So, for example, the city's not necessarily going to get into the business of childcare, but childcare may be a subject matter that is critical to the city. It is, but you know what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily that everything you see here is a list of things for the city to do. So we can frame this question as both the business community ensuring that they continue to exist and have and grow, right? But also that the relationship between the city and the business community has a framework and has a working relationship that supports the resilient community. So it's kind of both of those things are critical. So we can say in this report that the importance of the business community or / Guadalupe Business Association to continue to grow for the community to be resilient. That doesn't mean the city's going to necessarily do anything with that particular subject matter, but the business association would.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't change anything, I don't think, that you or that Bill or Eric said.
No, I think you're right on that. As you alluded to, it's a responsibility, or it's a goal for the city to remain open to engagement with the community, or to remain engaged with, like, not just the business community but all sections of the community. Just as it's the responsibility of the community to engage, the city. So that is a shared. That's a two-way street for sure.
Hang on just a second. Okay, so based on what we've been discussing, Sonia in the background has done a survey monkey. And she's going to put that SurveyMonkey link in the chat box. Everybody know how to get to the chat box and pull a link out of the chat box?
Yeah.
So the
Hopefully
way
it
this,
works.
yeah, yeah. So just so you know, what we're doing is listing, what we want you to do is click on 1, 2, and 3 of the assets and pick your highest priority of the assets. And then, and this is again based on culling that list. And then on the impediment side, we want you to pick the 3 of your highest priorities in relationship to the impediments. So I would ask that we go ahead and start doing that now, just so that we can get it finished during this time rather than you guys doing it offline.
And Tom,
Work with everybody?
I'm gonna need to sign off. It's 7:30 our time and we haven't eaten yet. So
Yeah, okay.
I will
I'm going
try to
to-
get caught up with you on the rest of what you've done tonight. And thank you for hosting this.
No problem. And listen, I'm going to send you, Larry, a link in an email to the survey. So if
Okay,
you want to
good.
do it at a later time, you can do it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Tom, I'm still a little bit mobile. Can you send me that link as well as in
Sure.
email?
Yeah, will do. I'll just send it to you and him.
Tom, this is John. Could you also do the same for me? I'm having internet issues. I still see and hear you guys, but I cannot get any browser response whatsoever.
No worries. John, do we have your email or can you put it in the chat box?
You should have it. I'm on your email list there, johnc.pshhc.org. I'll go ahead and type it in here too.
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah. Okay, I will get it to you as well, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just found it.
So Tom, on, so listing the assets that we want for priority, I mean, I can't remember what assets we have to choose from here. Oh, here it is. Okay,
Yeah,
it's
if
a
you
pull
click
down.
Their drop down.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
Sorry.
I thought we had to fill in the blank, and it's like, my brain's not working that well.
No, I would never do that to me, so I won't do it to you.
Well, my brain's not working well anyway, but
If
Okay.
there could be in the impediment, if there could be a depressed economy statement, because there's the low city money one, and then there's a thing about, but if there was a specific for depressed economy,
you would click that one on?
well, I don't like either of them because you build resiliency from making stone soup. So, but that's my bias, that we're part of this whole resiliency plan is just changing language.
Sure.
So
let me see, there's nothing. Do you want to just click on the disadvantaged community?
right, yeah, no, that I think that's what I did.
Yeah, okay. I get what you're saying. We'll think about the disadvantaged community as it relates to business development in Guadalupe.
Well, I think, as I think about it, Tom, maybe to just leverage, right? When we create this idea that we're in our lot because of some other contingency, if someone would just plunk down $1 billion, everything would be hunky dory. Well, there's no capacity, there's no infrastructure in the community to deal with that. $1 billion would just take over the community. So if we're going to really build community resilience, it's about stitching together the what I perceive as the incredibly deep social network, which is the multi-generational Guadalupe, and doing it in a way that is with mutual regard and not too much over racism. So that's a conversation that can happen with leadership and with trusted leadership within the community and people who are already in that dialogue, I'm probably not going to have that conversation that way with a 7th or an 8th grader. And yet that voice is very much a part of the community.
Yeah.
So, right. So part of this resiliency planning exercise is by its very process, it changes the conversation. This
So
idea,
what? Okay.
this idea
I mean,
yeah, right.
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, just we're using sort of standard language of impediment, which is, and the problem with impediment language is it identifies something that is standing in the way versus, oh, look, this is something we would like to do. What are the steps we are going to do to accomplish that? Which, yes, there are still impediments. There are still boulders in the road.
Yeah.
How we approach those boulders is just different.
Well, and it's so when you think about it in terms of larger subject matters, like for example, the development of downtown, redevelopment of downtown. That to me is a subject matter that has numerous possibilities. None of them are necessarily $1 billion.
Right.
They're about incremental small steps. How do we get the library into the downtown? How do we redevelop the theater? It's these small little steps that definitely require the community to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
How does the Guadalupe Business Association, how do they be a part of that redevelopment?
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you completely. It's to some degree we're getting to these. We're going to get to that place by going through these boulders in the road, and hopefully come out, on the other end with some reasonable expectations or some reasonable steps that need to be taken now that could be taken for a resilient perspective in the downtown. And I think what Larry said about not forgetting Pasadena and what will happen potentially there versus what's going to happen. So Pasadena, unless some weird thing occurs and a hotel gets built there, Pasadena is about services to Guadalupe residents. It's about a commercial area that's going to benefit the locals.
Right.
The supermarket. Whereas Guadalupe downtown is about bringing dollars into Guadalupe.
Right. Completely different economic capital.
Yes. 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 And I think, from a resilience planning perspective, what Larry said makes sense in that it should be really clear in the plan that they are separate and they should be developed, both of them,
right,
but developed in a separate way of looking at them.
Right, so that they're complementary and not in competition.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can't look at the downtown and say, we can redevelop this downtown by simply getting this 8,000 people in Guadalupe to eat downtown.
No.
No. There's got to be something more than that. But as a beginning, easy step, no funding necessary, how do we get people to use the downtown restaurants more that live in Guadalupe?
Right.
That doesn't mean that, you know what I mean? There's little small steps that could be done that have no reference to funding or anything like that, that the city, the business community, the nonprofits in the community, the service groups can all do to encourage that destination location. Okay, how are we doing with the survey, everyone? Those that are doing it?
Good. I finished.
Yep.
Okay, everybody else?
Yep, completed.
Okay, good. Sonia, are you getting the numbers?
Yeah, it looks like 4 people completed it.
If we take you and me out of that and we take 3 other people out of that, I think that's getting close to the right amount of people. Okay, so this is where we are done. I think there was one okay, there was there was another poll, but it's not showing up. So one last question to the group, just to get some response back. And we'll write down your answers for this, and then I think we've covered everything. We'll leave it open to any questions that anybody might have left over. The question is this: if you think in terms of, we started this resilience plan, and most of the assets and impediments that we've collected were pre-COVID. So I'm curious from the group, how has COVID changed the outcome, or changed the impediments, or changed our view of Guadalupe and its mechanisms to survive?
I'll volunteer a couple of thoughts.
Oh, good.
Spent about 30 years with small business, or actually 35. So I've got a certain particular bent, I guess, or a bias. But since we're talking about mom and pops and restaurants and destination and the small town feel, which is what's close to our heart at Bridget.org, small businesses, it would be the kindling, right? That, I mean, for us entrepreneurs, the kindling, that's where the energy comes from, the fire and the spirit. So when we noticed almost a year ago that this pandemic had accelerated a shift to the virtualization of many businesses, we actually were a little bit ahead of the curve at the time, and now we're right on the curve. A lot of small business can be generated, and entrepreneurs can be supported now within a more of a virtual space, so that they don't have to have all of the infrastructure and so forth. However, they can grow into that infrastructure. You've all heard about ghost restaurants now. So when you look at the cart or horse, now with the pandemic having made a shift, a lot of those shifts are permanent. TripAdvisor, Google Street View, destination shopping is happening on the screen, the small screen. So with the opportunity now to invigorate a community, it's actually amplified by the digital curb appeal. So what we do is, we focus on the digital curb appeal to bring in that spirit, and then we work on training new entrepreneurs, people who have a gift for something. Maybe they make candles, maybe they make blueberry pies, farmers markets, goods. I noticed farmers market was showing up on one of those, wish we had that kind of thing. It's incredible that the town doesn't, because it's such a perfect place for that. And you have what we call ghost signs, which the reason why I found Guadalupe was because I had been browsing around for more information, I guess, on general on California's small towns. And the phrase came up, most Instagrammable town in America, for Guadalupe, right? And that one story got me there. Well, you multiply that by 100 entrepreneurs who have small businesses that have become virtual for a while. Maybe they move into the brick and mortar, taking over some of those storefronts that are empty. And suddenly you have this attractive environment to bring people in. Oh my God, they make the best terracotta coffee mugs there, whatever it is. So there's so much potential right at that edge there to be that kind of village feeling and those communities that you're talking about. So I always put the entrepreneur first, the community spirit first, what does the community ask for, and then use that energy and find those shining stars and help them become business owners with all that that entails. And believe me, you know, I've secured over $18 million worth of SBA funding for our startups, and I know what it's like. It's a big, big process, but with the help of a community or a town that stands behind their people, zoning regulations that allow them to have the kind of sign that they need in order to be visible, because 49% of the business of a business's new customers walk in because they saw the sign. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So there's so much that can be manifest for those who say, well, I need a job that pays better. Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you can get that little SBA loan and you can get things rolling and you've got this somebody behind you who's got a lot of expertise to support you, it kind of spearheads all of that. So the pandemic has generated such a groundswell of interest in virtualization of yoga classes, virtualization of cooking classes, you name it. It's bookkeeping classes, meditation classes, and it goes on and on and on. So if they don't have, one of my interests is setting up a studio that actually is full service, but so that's, you know, that's on my personal interest side. But with a studio type of environment, they can actually come in, do the show, have an expert out there that's actually, you know, I'm what's called an on Zoom host in the beta group. There's about 80 of us in the country. So Zoom had a baby, it's called on Zoom. But anyway, that allows for them to sell tickets and generate money. So they make more money than they did as a job person. So there's so much potential now with virtualization and that digital curb appeal can be influenced dramatically by a facade program where the empty storefronts have the most amazing 10-year life banner type of material that's framed into the space, matches the windows looks and everything, but has maybe a head peeking out that's kind of fun of a famous person, or a little dog walking by and a faux tree. But then when Google Street View, which uses a 360 camera, so that's that can be submitted to Street View, you can get all the fresh view of your town, and people go, oh my God, I want to take a picture for Instagram in front of that faux building facade. And then you already have your ghost signs and you have everything else drawing people, and you've got the bridge and you've got the vistas and the 360 views and all of that. So it all feeds together in what we call the virtual curb appeal. So, and one of the pieces of kindling or an engine for that is the entrepreneurial spirit that could be in the town, that could be better supported by a low cost entry into the business world, where they don't need to have necessarily be paying rent right away, or engaging in a space like that. And then they're employing people. And then that begins, that engine continues to move everything forward. So that was my perspective, and that's why I'm here. Larry invited me, so I'm glad I stopped in.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anybody else? I completely understand and agree with you, Teresa, that there is a virtual world now, and while some of it will go away, it won't go away completely.
Exactly.
I think we'll see that staying, just like my neighbor who moved in from Google next door. You know, it is the nature of the way it is.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything they want to add?
Well, just because of when I stepped in, sort of 3 weeks prior to things beginning to really crash.
You were longer than that.
Well, yeah, but not that much longer.
We got 2 business groups meetings going before we disappeared.
Well, and the reality is we haven't disappeared, and the virtual nature has created this very strong parallel conversation. And one of the things that's come out of the COVID is we keep talking about virtual meetings. This meeting is not virtual for me. I've been in this meeting for 2 hours. So this idea that we really are having to create additional language that makes more sense for the world as it is now constructed, the reality of this world, so that we can actually have meetings where people are there electronically and fully present and fully participating, as well as physically in space. And one of the challenges for Guadalupe is the infrastructure for allowing that to happen is really limited. And just, Tom, for you, broadband's not 20 years away. You've got all the major telecoms have broadband
I
in
know.
Guadalupe right now. And part of the conversation tomorrow night is how to not turn that into a 20-year project, but get it really going. Because there's last mile stuff that's immediately available too. So I think that,
Yeah.
creating that utility, that fourth utility in the community is going to completely change the perspective of the community.
I think so too. I think there's a, so I say 20 years because it's not something, it's something, if you're looking at it from the whole perspective of the circle, it could be. I mean, I would love to know that this is really going to happen. And certainly on the federal level and on the state level, there's an incentive for this to happen.
Yeah, major.
What I found is that Guadalupe doesn't quite fit into all of the criterias for funding. We have enough download and upload numbers that we don't qualify under this program, that sort of thing.
Right. So the alignment chasing for Guadalupe
Chasing
to move from chasing grant funding or chasing help me funding to actually being a driver is what I heard, Teresa. That's what I heard you saying, is that you can really reposition to drive it instead of wait to be a recipient of it.
Yep.
And that was the earlier conversation, Bob. That's what you've done with your project. Because when we first talked, it was all about, well, if the low income housing funds the community center isn't available to the community. Well, you've made a determination not to do that, right? So I think the biggest thing of the COVID is that people who've been using this sort of standard, there is no money, there is no money, there is no money, all of a sudden there is this growing group of saying, yeah, well, there's a different way to skin this cat, let's try that.
So is that your COVID comment?
That's my COVID comment.
So you wouldn't necessarily change any of the impediments and assets that we've collected up to now?
Mm-mm. No.
We've not learned anything different from this.
Well, what we've learned is that standard language is pretty empty, and a year of living this way means that many things that people were saying will never happen and is not possible, we've just lived through a year of it. And yes, there's been a huge death toll. At the same time, the opportunity structures have shifted. I mean, Eric, I was thinking about you being in Colorado and we having really intense meetings. They weren't virtual. We stood up the business association, right? So this idea that movement, we're not talking about getting ready to prepare. We're doing stuff. That's a big lesson for me.
For me, it's, I mean, I kind of go back on what Teresa said, we are redeveloping a sense of place there are certain things that need to be close. I'm not going to drive to Sacramento and nobody's going to deliver from Sacramento my groceries. So, the importance of having some resources locally, certain resources locally, a place where I can grab a pizza for takeout, a place where I can, grab a coffee on my way to work. Some of those things, do still matter. But there's a whole other, like the world of work and place has shifted pretty dramatically for a portion of the population. And then you go back to, but we've got fields we've got fields in our backyards. Those fields aren't going to go anywhere. Like nobody's going to move nobody's going to move broccoli production to Canada tomorrow night because they can build a cheaper building. It ain't going to happen. So there's all these concepts of place that we kind of got, sorry to use the pun, complacent with. And this has changed so many of those that, you know, we have out, I mean, as much as it's been a threat to some, it's been an opportunity for a lot. So, I mean, I kind of go with Teresa that the biggest effect of COVID has been rethinking the sense of place.
Well, and also to your point, the labor force. I mean, the folks who are harvesting Brussels sprout all around my house today are actually permanent labor force. They are not migrant. And that has changed even the structure of how we do agriculture. So, and that's been coming for a while. It's like the perfect storm moment of, okay, if we create Guadalupe as a really diversified place, which is inviting to tourism dollars are really nice dollars. If it's inviting to local community and the community development bridges all of that, then you have a resilient, sustainable place. If one is heavier than the other, then that tension build continues. And Guadalupe, I think, is in that moment of this is only opportunity. I mean, the other change, Tom, is the language of the council. I mean, Ariston's doing a lot of leaning in right now. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, so some of the, some of the things that you're talking about, like the council, is really something that's non-pandemic related, but it's certainly a better council to address the issue than prior councils.
Mm-hmm.
So you certainly got a group that were in place that's good to be in place. Mm-hmm. I would have liked to have seen the business association have got up and running before the pandemic. But, you know, that's the way it is. It didn't, you know, but just because I think the resources that we came about and some of the things we could have done to help the local businesses were not in place in time. But they're still there now. So other than that, I mean, I would agree with you. Overall, I think not much will be changed, especially from the economic development perspective. I think some of the other subject matters that we're going to go through, we may have a different answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we talk about it from the youth and children's perspective, we may see something very different.
Well, and I think that's going to be one of the challenges, that a solution for business and the economy is going to have to be aligned with how do you do family groups, how do you do many multi-generational family groups, how do you support public health with multi-generational family groups, and how do you manage illness within that? Those are all, as a positive public health message versus making evil or criminalizing.
Yeah, and how do you adjust childcare to the new normal?
Right.
Those are all things that I do think there's probably more to say about how the pandemic has affected than I would say economy. And I think you're right on the economic side of it. It appears to be adjusting on its own, mm-hmm, for the most part. Okie dokie, it is 6 o'clock. Is there any last comment from anyone before we close it down? I do want to say that I appreciate everybody's input. RCDCC is in the process of changing to Los Amigos de Guadalupe. And in that change, we have a new website that's up, but not everything on the RCDC website has transferred over yet. So as soon as I can get the resilience page redone on Los Amigos webpage, I will get it out, and For example, you know that this is being recorded, so this meeting will go online so that people can look at it and see what was done today. And they can get some of those comments. So all of the focus groups will go online as we do them.
So Tom, I just had a real brief comment, something that Bill mentioned earlier about the broadband triggered. I attended the City of Lompoc council meeting last Tuesday, and they are partnering with the Vandenberg Air Force Base, and maybe you're already familiar with what they're doing, but they talked about it extensively, and they do record their meetings as well. So I thought there was some valuable information, and I don't know if there's any opportunity for the City of Guadalupe to sort of partner with the City of Lompoc in partnering with Vandenberg Air Force
So
Base.
Vandenberg is, right now, Vandenberg is, what would you say, Eric, is moving this issue along. So there is a consortium that's working on what they call a North County, what's the term, Bill? North County Ring?
The ring, yeah.
Yeah, North County Ring. And so I'm sure that that conversation you listened to, Bob, was probably related to one of the many miles that have to be done to create the larger ring. And Guadalupe's in that ring as part of the work. And it's Bill could probably summarize where it's at
Bill
now
is presenting tomorrow night to the Guadalupe Business Association.
Oh, good.
And he's the convener for the broadband consortium, which is San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara County, and Ventura County. So definitely, if you can tomorrow night, pop in, because you can get the sort of both the overview of the Vandenberg partnership but also the larger consortium.
Okay.
Will that be a Zoom event? Is that something that I can attend, or is that just more of a different group? Okay. If somebody can get the invite to me, that'd be great.
I don't think I have your email.
Okay.
So do you want to put your email in the chat box, please?
Sure.
And I'll forward you
Teresa Y.
I'll forward you the Guadalupe Business Association email that has the link in it.
Great.
Bob, are you getting those from Garrett?
Yes, I am. Wednesday nights are tough for me, so I will. What I'll try and do is attend the first part of the meeting tomorrow.
They're going first, yeah.
I think Elaine said that she was sitting in for you as well, Bob.
Yes, I think Eileen's going to be in tomorrow. Eileen Monahan, so she's been working with me on the Escalante project.
And I gave her email to Garrett, and he was adding her to the list.
Okay.
Excellent.
Because Bob, I think just because of your position with the trust, I think let me hook you up with Simmons too, so you're part of that whole data dump. It just seems like it's critical countywide for you.
Great. No, that's great.
What is that web address for the location that you said you're either going to load the video to, or the old location or the new website?
Yeah, so on new, actually, I'll just pop it in the chat box as well. It's the name of the new nonprofit is Los Amigos de Guadalupe, and that's the email. That's the web address .org.
Okay.
You'd want to try that while I look for Garrett's.
The subject matter this evening has been very right on. And if you go to Bridget.org, BRIGET.org, the articles there all discuss exactly the topics you're talking about.
Super.
It's really amazing to me.
Great. Teresa, where are you based?
Right now in Dana Point, California, but we'll be moving this year and hopefully to Guadalupe.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa, I just sent you the email.
Great.
It's not
The
an
URL.
email, the newsletter with it.
Okay, great.
So
I'm going to go because
be...
I have to go to the council meeting.
Yes, you do.
So much.
Break
Have
a
Have a
leg.
good night.
You too,
Thank
Sonia.
you. Take care.
Sonia.
We're presenting a capital campaign.
Great.
Got enough
So
ball-
excited. We're a little bit short on that Leroy Park Community Center project. We need a little bit more money, so we're going to start a capital campaign.
Wow. Okay.
So I expect Bill you to at least give me I say 500,000 for the new extension to the community center.
I'll get right on that, Tom.
We'll call it Bartel's Community Center.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's going to cost you $1 million.
I
Sorry.
was going to say naming rights will pass.
Yes, she's doing the presentation about how on that subject, so it'll be fun. Okay, everyone. I don't know if we have anything else that we need to talk about, but again, really appreciate you sitting here for 2 hours and listening to me and giving us your comments and your ideas and your suggestions. They're all saved electronically now in this video. And as we move along, we'll keep as much information that we can onto the new website. And I'll eventually send out an email, a blast email, once everything's been moved over, to let people know that that's the place to go to get your resilience information. And Teresa, I don't know if you want to, but I can put you on that interested parties list so you get
Sure.
the emails.
That'd be great. Yep. That
Okay.
sounds good.
I will add you to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Isn't
Thank
it
you,
great what
Tom.
we can do
Good
with
stuff.
remote?
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.